Sorry about that. Yeah. So IF is not a diet. It's not a meal plan. It's not a diet. And I don't like to use the word diet because when people talk about diets, they talk of the stringent measures and things that take to be very restrictive and something that is really not sustainable. So I just like to use the word meal patterns and meal plans. So IF is not a meal plan. It's a pattern of eating. So we will still have to maintain the context of our eating in terms of what macronutrients, what specific foods we are eating. So nothing is changing in that capacity. The only thing that will change during intermittent fasting is the times that you're eating. So the times that you choose for eating, and we will get into that in a bit, will determine how many number of meals you're eating. It doesn't change the content of your food. So during IF, you want to make sure, especially if you're eating 1 or 2 meals, you want to make sure you're balancing your plate and you're getting at least a carb, a protein, and vegetables, and plenty of vegetables. Because if you're just doing one specific food or 2 foods, then you're going to be deficient a lot. So you want to be careful on how what foods you're eating. So that still remains, but mostly it's going to be determined by how many hours you're choosing to fast and how many hours you're choosing as your eating window. So the category of that breaks down to several kind of a thing, but we will get into that. So it could be fasting longer, more than the 12 hours that people fast, because a lot of people either fast between 7 hours to 12 hours in a day naturally because they're sleeping, unless people who stay very late at night or people who work overnights. People who work overnights or who travel a lot, they kind of tend to overeat because every waking moment, sometimes, especially if it's very, it's the cycle where the body is needing to sleep, it kind of tends to compensate that with cravings and wanting to eat all the time. So the people who work overnights, people who travel a lot tend to overeat. But for a normal day, you'll find that you will be fasting between 7 hours to 12 hours in a day. So when we're doing intermittent fasting, we kind of change that. So we have several options where you can just eat 1 meal a day. So that will be termed as what we call the 1 meal a day OMAD. And then you can do 20 hours against 4 hours, which means it's 4 hours of eating and then 20 hours of fasting. When you're doing 20 hours of fasting and 4 hours of fasting, you're likely to only feed in 1 meal and a snack. You're not, if you're feeding in 2 meals, you're kind of stretching it a little bit, but it can still work with 2 meals. Then you have where you're fasting for 6 hours and you're eating for 18 hours. So 18 hours against 6 hours of eating. That one, you're comfortably able to feed in 2 meals. You can stretch it and put in a snack, but I wouldn't advise it. So you're able to feed in 2 full meals. And then you have the one that you have 16 hours and 8 hours of eating. Now that one you can comfortably feed in 2 meals and a snack. That one you can eat 2 meals and a snack because you have 8 hours where you do 4 hours, a snack, and another meal. And then you can balance that out. And then you have 14 hours of eating and 10 hours of 10 hours of eating and 14 hours of fasting. That is when somebody that they're beginning or they're not sure what they want to do, they're not comfortable with doing so long hours, or if they work very strenuous jobs and they don't want it to kind of crush the body to a level where they're not used to. So that would work like that. But beyond that, then it becomes just a regular day where you're fasting 12 hours and you're eating the other 12 hours or 7 hours or so. So some of the benefits of fasting, and this what I'm focusing on right now, I'm not focusing on a spiritual fast. I'm focusing on IF basically in terms of health, not in terms of the spiritual aspect. But it will still have a bearing in terms of the spiritual benefits. So one of the things that helps you burn fat IF will, with the extended feeding not feeding, extended fasting periods, you find that there's an extra crash to the stubborn fast that are stuck somewhere. So, and this to be very effective, I would not encourage anybody to do IF if they're only going to do it for less than a month. If they're going to do it for 1 month or less, then I wouldn't really encourage, because the body will not have caught a routine. And especially if you're not a veteran in it, if you're not used to doing IF for that much. So I would really encourage a startup between a month and a half, or month and 2. The most ideal, I would say, if you want to do an effective IF, it's between a month and 3 months. So that one kind of works out very well. So it also improves your thinking and memory capacity, because the brain is able to get stretched out a little bit, and it jogs out. So that clarity and the cleansing of the gut and the GI. And remember, go back to our lessons before, one of the lessons we've done before, where the gut is connected to the brain. So that cleansing of the gut system kind of creates a rejuvenated kind of connection between the gut microbiome and the brain sensory nerves. So it also improves just heart health, because if your blood is able to pump better, you are able to burn extra fat. That will tend to kind of eliminate extra fat that builds up along the arteries and blood veins and blood vessels. So that kind of works well to improving overall heart health. It also helps improving physical performance. So physical performance, this one is more directed to make sure there's nobody around that can hear me using bad words. So you know what I mean. So that it works on hormones. So remember back to our lesson about hormones and just how they affect the body and what happens. So in improvement of functional of hormones and the hormone capacity, it helps improve body energy levels, but it also helps improve blood flow. So blood flow in terms of increased heart health and better blood pressure control, it improves physical performance. And you know what I mean when I say that. I don't want to use clear words for another day. So it also improves self-control and self-mastery. Fasting is a lot of guts. It's a lot of self-discipline to see food and not just jump into it. So it kind of starts to work on your general self-discipline muscles. So if you're just doing IF and you're eating 1 meal a day, for example, and I wouldn't encourage, if you're not very familiar with fasting, to start with 1 meal a day. It's kind of a stretch. So, but if, for example, you're doing just 1 meal a day and you do that for the next 2 months, that's a lot of discipline that is required. So it kind of starts working, and you get time to focus on other things. You get creative on doing other things, and the time that you use worrying about what am I eating, even if you're preparing the food, you can create a space in your brain where it goes to do other things than just focusing on food, focusing on eating, because you're trying to get out of the space of I'm eating, I'm preparing. You disconnect from that desire to eat at that particular moment. So it helps you with self-control and self-mastery, and kind of just putting a physical appetite into check and into subjection to yourself. So with improved heart health, reduced artery clogging and things like that, there's the improvement of blood sugar control and insulin sensitivity. So you find that when the sugars are well controlled, when the body is devoid of constant flow of insulin, the insulin tends to become more sensitive, and we want your insulin to be more sensitive, because the higher the sensitive, the higher the sensitivity of your insulin, the more it's able to manage your blood sugars. If your insulin is not sensitive enough, then it takes so much insulin for it to kind of manage little amounts of glucose. If it is very sensitive, then you need very small vials of insulin to manage large amount of blood sugar, and therefore it's able to eliminate a lot of blood sugar, blood glucose from your, I mean glucose from your blood. So therefore, we want that sensitivity to increase, and it also reduces tissue damage, because anything that we put in our mouth, whether healthy or unhealthy, it produces what we call the oxidative stress. So basically, oxidative stress in the normal language is a lot of there's a lot of breakdown of food. There's just due to that natural digestion and tear and wear in the system, it produces a lot of free radicals. So the more the free radicals the body has, the more your tissues get damaged, the more we get older fast, the more you find you're fatigued all the time, the more your body organs wear out faster. So when you give the body that rest and extended periods of fasting, it kind of repairs that tissue and encourages the the breakdown, what is it called? Like antioxidant, like the oxidants kind of work, and that tissue breakdown kind of slows down. So it reduces that tissue damage. The caveat to this is, especially if you take any over-the-counter medication or you have any physical condition or any health condition, you need to check with your doctor. You need clearance from your medical doctor. And even if you're not sure of what to do and how it can affect your health, you need to consult with your primary care doctor. That's a very important factor. You don't want to jump into something that you're not sure. And especially as age goes by with us, we also need to be checking in with our primary care doctor very often. If it is done properly, it can be of great health benefits. But you want to know that any extreme IF measures, and that's what will bring us to what are you supposed to be eating when you're doing intermittent fasting? Because any extreme measures taken during IF, unless it's a spiritual fast, it can be very dangerous to health. So you want to be moderate. You want to kind of observe the midline and not be extreme, because those extremities can be very dangerous. I don't like to stipulate the extremity of spiritual fasting, but it's also good. You have to, the biggest caveat to spiritual fasting, although we're not dealing with that today, but I need to mention this, is you have to be sure that God is leading you to do a spiritual fast, because you're getting into the enemy territory with fasting. It's a spiritual weapon. And if you're not ready, and if not something that you really prepared yourself for spiritually, you can hurt yourself. You can hurt yourself both physically and spiritually when you do fasting when we are not ready. And so that's a topic for another day. So what do I eat? You want to maintain your water intake. If you're doing a longer IF fasting, and especially if you're eating either 2 meals or 1 meal a day, you don't want to do your full amount of your water intake. So that one we can circle back and kind of evaluate depending on what are the plans that you choose. Because if you're eating limited amounts for extended periods of time and you're drinking too much water, your body can go into eliminating a lot of your minerals and electrolytes. So you don't want to kind of miss that electrolyte balance. So when you're fasting, and especially this is even more so when you're doing a spiritual fast. If you're doing an extended spiritual fast, you want to be careful how much water you're taking. You don't want to cause that electrolyte imbalance, because remember, you're not putting in a lot of food and a lot of salt and electrolytes in your body through food. So you don't want to drink like too much water and kind of dilute your system. So it's something we want to kind of work on, and depending on what are your modalities, then we can see how much water you're reducing during your fast and how much water you get back to once your fast is over. So during your fast, between the window of not eating, that window when you're not eating, for example, if you're doing the 20 hours or the 18 hours or the 16 hours or the 14 hours of fasting, you want to make sure you're eating anything that has less than 5 grams of carbs. Anything that passes that gram, you're breaking your fast. You can take lemon water, you can take cucumber water. If you start taking things like ginger, if you start taking, those ones have a little bit more of electrolytes, and it's going to skew out from the fasting zone. So you can take black coffee, you can take black tea, you can take crystallized water. I don't encourage them, but sometimes people have just a hard time, if you've not eaten for quite a while, to drink just water and meet your water content. So you can take warm water. Warm water sometimes is more tolerable when you're doing extended periods of fasting than just cold or room temperature water. So you want to do just whatever works for you. just make sure that any drink that you take it doesn't go beyond 3 to 5 grams of carbs. Otherwise, you will be losing the essence of it, breaks that fasting concept. So it doesn't mean that you're going to go berserk on whatever you're eating. You say, now, because I'm fasting between this time to this time, I can just eat whatever I want. No, you still have to maintain a healthy eating meal plan. But depending on the number of meals you're eating, you want to make sure at least you have your meal, one full meal in the day that has the full what is it called? The full macronutrients. It has a carbohydrate, it has a protein, and it has your vegetables. It has a little bit of fat here and there, because you want to maintain that nutrition. You don't want to crush your body. We're not doing starving. We are kind of managing a controlled eating pattern. So you want to balance your carbs, you want to balance your proteins and vegetables, as well as being cautious of your vitamins and minerals, being very key. So this is a really good opportunity for you to probably make an appointment with your healthcare provider and do a lab work. Just kind of determine what is your general status of your biochemical test, like your electrolytes, your vitamins, your minerals. How is your B vitamins? How is your iron? How is your vitamin D? How is your zinc? And if you get a good supplier of multivitamins, it will be a good time when you need to kind of supplement yourself. And that reminds me, I need to do a lesson on vitamins and micronutrient supplementation. And how does that help in weight loss and weight maintenance? How does low micronutrient level affect our ability to lose weight? So you want to make sure, if you can, it's not compulsory, it's not a must, but if you can, I would encourage you making a visit to the PCP and just kind of determining where are your labs at. So this is a good opportunity to do that. So if you're not creative in your meal planning, you're going to get bored very easily. You're going to be frustrated. So you need to be creative. You need to make your meals enjoyable. It doesn't mean that, okay, now I'm eating healthy, I'm fasting, I cannot make my meals enjoyable. You want to make sure that you use a lot of green herbs and a lot of natural spices to make your food tasty, so that those few moments when you're having time with your food, you are enjoying what you're doing. Because if you're fasting and then again, you're not enjoying the meals that you're eating, you're going to be frustrated. So you need to be creative with your meals. You need to make sure whatever you're eating, you're enjoying it, and you're creating an atmosphere of enjoying your food. So this circles back to also just the general environment and how food intertwines with every other aspect of our lives. Because if you don't have a good support system, if you don't have fun family moments, if you're struggling and thinking and worrying all the time, it's going to be really hard, not just for IF, generally for healthy eating, it's going to be a challenge. And more so the capacity and the ability to just, it's not so much on the good times, although the good times can be tricky because that's when we tend to go haywire with ice cream and all these things, celebrating and everything. But more so, I'm worried so much, I'm concerned so much on the production of the bad hormones like the cortisol and things like that when it's very stressful moments. So we want to try to create an atmosphere of calm and peace, and just knowing that worry is not my friend. Stress is not my friend. So I want to try as much as possible to have an environment that is stress-free. I know that is harder said than done, but we can start making strides towards those directions. So, and this also brings me to the point of social eating. So you want to make your meals, eat with people. You don't want to eat alone. You don't want those times that, and that's why I also say intermittent fasting, you cannot do it for a long time. I was telling somebody the other day, a lot of people who succeed with intermittent fasting for years and years tend to be people who are very antisocial, because it's not easy for you to have very strict eating patterns when you're interacting with people from day to day, from more often. It's going to be a challenge because people will not, food connects people. food brings people together. Friendships, most of the time, you go for a girls' night out, there's food. You go for a church function, there's food. You go for whatever it is, this food is surrounded by, and unless you have a community that enjoys the things that you enjoy through your meal plans, it's going to be really challenging to stay year in out with intermittent fasting. When you're like, if you eat at 4 and you're meeting at 2, then you have to wait until it's 4 and somebody's watching you like you're not eating. So it creates that social tension. So we want to take advantage of every opportunity to be able to eat with people, and kind of it's also a prayer issue, because God makes this happen, and he grants sometimes, if they align with his will, he grants us some desires that we have. So you want to be in line with what God is doing in your life, and be sure to kind of intertwine your eating with how God is directing you, and it's possible. So it can be dangerous for people with things like type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes has to be insulin managed because your body is not producing any insulin. So if somebody wants to join with you who is not doing this program, or somebody's like, oh, I want to do IF, let me do what you're doing, you want to be very careful to let them know, or if you have one of these conditions, you need to be careful how you go about it, because type 1 diabetes can kill you. So you don't want to play around, because your body is not producing any insulin at all. So that one can only be controlled by how much food you're eating, then how much insulin you're taking. So you want to be cautious of that and work with your primary healthcare doctor. People who are lactating and who are pregnant, you also want to be careful how you go about it. It can be dangerous because you're taking in a lot of calories away from you through lactation, or even because of the pregnancy. So you want to be able to be careful for that. It can be extremely dangerous for people with eating disorders, because it can create a pattern of binging and then purging out and things like that. So you also want to be careful if you feel that like the tendencies to kind of create, because you can judge yourself when you're kind of getting sucked into just kind of bad eating habits, like the guilt and shame. That's the first thing that kind of starts to tell you now you're crossing a red zone. When you start feeling guilt and shame and being there's a difference, like even in the spiritual aspect, where you're being convicted of an act that you're doing is not right. But when your body and mind start translating that to your identity and causing you to have that guilt and that shame, now your body is starting to cross a red zone, and you need either to talk to somebody, you need for us to review what you're doing in terms of your meal plans. You don't want to cross that line, because the idea of the whole thing is not to create your guilt or shame, is to be able to create an ambience of fun, enjoyment, as well as maintaining a discipline that keeps you healthy. So spiritual fasting is completely different. It doesn't come from me as a coach. It comes from you as a person, and it has to be something that is spiritually beginning. If you're using it primarily to lose weight, then you're going to miss the point. You're going to crush yourself, and it's the enemy is not going to let you do it. Overall, spiritual fasting helps in managing health and weight loss, but that shouldn't be the primary reason why we do spiritual fasting, not for weight loss. It's part of it. It's a discipline that gets created, but you want to be careful how you come into it, because the enemy is watching, and you want to crush anything that is going to crush him. And fasting is a tool that God uses to help us kind of crush the flesh and all those physical appetite and temptations that we get. And we just want to be careful and make sure that it's something that God is leading you to do for a specific reason, and not just for the sake of, I want to do it. Then that translates to a health fast and not a spiritual fast. And basically that's a basic undertone to what the IF entails. Now, what you want to do at this point, or if you're watching the replay, what everybody needs to do at this point is sit down and just listen to yourself, watch the patterns you've been doing, consider your strengths and your weaknesses that you have you've noticed that the last 2 months, And then ask yourself, which is the pattern that I'm willing to try and start with? Is it that I don't want to encourage anybody to do 1 meal a day? Unless you've done one cycle of IF, I don't want to encourage anybody to do 1 meal a day. So we are looking at, do I want to do the 20-4, or do I want to do the 18-6, or do I want to do the 16?